Hello. We are actually going to start the book in Chapter 3. Chapter 3 covers solving equations. So we're going to start with Section 3.1. In this video, we're actually going to cover Section 3.2 as well. So what I'm going to give you now are the steps that we're going to use for Section 3.1 and Section 3.2. So Section 3.1 covers solving two-step equations. So the steps for solving a multi-step equation. We have 5 steps. Now the steps are actually found in your book on page 129. I have tweaked them a little bit, so they're not exactly the same, but these 5 steps should prove to work for any equation that you solve. So step 1. Step 1, you're always going to clear the equation of fractions. Step 2, remove the grouping symbols. Step 3, combine like terms on each side. Step 4, undo the addition or subtraction. And step 5, undo multiplication or division. So once again, this is your chance to pause the video, rewind at any point that you need. So remember, you can manipulate the video to help you out when taking notes. And you can add this at the top of your notes as well, that we are also doing Section 3.2, which is solving multi-step equations. So example 1, solve each equation. Now when we solve the equation, you should remember that the purpose of solving an equation is to find the value of the variable, to get the letter by itself. So remember that whenever I'm teaching you to solve something, there are multiple ways to solve it. So what we're doing is following those 5 steps that I showed you. So step 1 said to get rid of any fractions. We don't have any. Step 2 is to get rid of parentheses and other grouping symbols. We don't have any of those. But step 3 says combine like terms on both sides. Well, as you can see, 2c and 1c are like terms, so we just combine them together. 3c. And then we have plus 12 equals 78. Now, I expect you to be able to do a lot of this in your head now. 3c plus 12 equals 78. Step 4, how do you get rid of a plus 12? We have to undo the plus 12. So the opposite, or the inverse operation of plus 12 is subtract 12. So we do that on both sides. That would give us 3c equals, and 78 minus 12, that would give us 66. Now, we have to now get rid of multiplication or division. That's step 5. Well, 3 times c, we have to get rid of the times 3. The opposite of times 3 is divide by 3. Whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. We divide by 3. So 66 divided by 3 is 22. So our answer is 22. Now I want to show you what eventually, if you're already there, you can do this. But I want to show you a shortcut. Or basically to do the problem without showing all the work. And that's fine with me. In this problem, I would expect you once again to add the like terms. So 3c plus 12 equals 78. If you know that you have to subtract 12 on both sides, you don't have to put it. Just subtract 12. So you can take 78 minus 12 and get 66. And then you know you have to get rid of a times 3. So we divide both sides by 3. That gives me 22. If you are comfortable skipping those steps, you are more than welcome to skip them. But if you're not, go ahead and show those steps. Either way works for me. But your answer is 22. Example number 2. Now, you notice that this is a word problem. If you would like, you may pause the video and write this down in your notes. However, this problem is also on page 127 in your book. So if you just want to put example 2, page 127, and then you can put the work down, that's fine. You still need to have the work, but if you don't want to copy this since it's out of the book, that's okay as well. So let's go over this. A gardener is planting a rectangular garden area in a community garden. His garden will be next to an existing 12-foot fence. The gardener has a total of 44 feet of fencing to build the other 3 sides of his garden. How long will the garden be if the width is 12 feet? Now, I would expect you all to be able to solve this without an equation. But we're going to start with an easy problem to be able to model it with an equation. So we know that this 12 feet is already there. So we have to figure out an equation for the remaining 3 sides of the garden. Well, just add them up. So if we look at it, we have an x and we have an x. What's this side? This side is the same as the other because it's a rectangle, so we know that's 12. So what equation do you think we'd write? Well, we have x plus x, so that's going to give us 2x, plus this width, which is 12. Now, are we going to add this 12 on the other side in? Why not? Because this 12 is already here. So the fencing only needs to be placed on the 3 sides, not 4th. So we know that 2x plus 12 has to equal a total amount of fencing of 44 feet. So now let's solve this. There's no parentheses, there's no fractions, so we can subtract 12. So if we subtract 12 on both sides, that gives us 2x equals 32. We have to do the opposite, which is step 5 of multiplication. So we undo multiplication by dividing both sides by 2, and that gives us 16. Now, this is where we have to attend to precision. You can't just tell me 16 is the answer. The question asks, how long will the garden be? You have to go one step further and say that the garden would be 16 feet long. So the garden will be 16 feet long. Put sense with your word problems. Make sense out of it. What are we trying to find? Make sure you answer it correctly using labels or sentences, whatever you need to. So our answer would be 16 feet long. In example 3, our problem says -2 times the quantity b minus 4 equals 12. Or you could say -2 times the difference of b and 4 is 12. So in this problem, we have to get rid of parentheses. Now last year, you were taught how to solve using distributive property. So distributive property, to review, is when you have to take everything outside the parentheses, in this case -2, and you have to multiply it to everything inside the parentheses. So we're going to take -2 times b. -2 times b would give us -2b. -2 times -4, don't forget that negative. -2 times -4 gives us +8 equals 12. So -2b plus 8 equals 12. We have 2 things we want to get rid of: multiplication and addition. Step 4 says we have to get rid of addition first, or subtraction. In this case, it's addition. So once again, we're going to subtract 8 because that's the opposite of adding 8. So once again, you don't have to put that step if you don't want to. So -2b, we subtract 8 on both sides. That gives me -2b equals 4. The last step is getting rid of a times -2. The opposite of times 2 is divide by -2. Don't forget that negative. -2 divided by -2, that's just 1. That's how we get 1b. 4 divided by -2 gives me -2. And my answer is -2. Now I'm going to have you write this problem down again. And the reason is I want to show you that there are so many other ways to do problems. If you're looking at this, you may think, well, distributive property is the only way that I have to do this. But wait a minute. What are we multiplying by right here? We're multiplying by -2. So if you want to do the opposite of times -2, what's the opposite of times? The opposite of multiplication is division. So we're going to divide this entire expression on both sides by -2. Now, -2 divided by itself, that gives me 1, so I have nothing left. I'm left with b minus 4 equals 12 divided by -2 gives me -6. I now have to undo the subtraction. So the opposite of minus 4 is plus 4. And negative 6 plus 4 gives me negative 2. You will notice that either way, you come up with the same answer. How you get there is fine with me. But you can either distribute to get rid of the parentheses, or you can try to divide. And if that doesn't work, or if you don't feel comfortable with that, that's okay. But you still got to get rid of the grouping symbols. You have to get rid of the parentheses first. All right, example number 4. Example number 4 says 2x divided by 3 plus x divided by 2 equals 7. Now, you obviously, I'm hoping you can see that 2x and x are like terms with denominators. You may think to yourself back to elementary school where you're like, well, I have to add fractions together. I need to get a common denominator of 6. If you want to do that, that will work. However, look at step 1 on the steps that you just wrote down. Step 1 says, clear the equation of fractions. Here's how you do it. You have to look at all 3 of these terms. You have a term here, and a term here. Now, if we look at this, the denominator here is 3, the denominator here is 2, and this would be 7 divided by 1, so this one's just a 1 at the bottom since 7's a whole number. If you multiplied, for example, everything by 5, this would be 5 times 2. You would get 10 divided by 3. 10 divided by 3 is a fraction. That does not get rid of the fraction. 5 times x is 5x divided by 2. 5 divided by 2 gives me a decimal. That doesn't work. So you have to think of a number that you can divide by 3 and divide by 7. Or I'm sorry, divide by 2. Now the 7 doesn't matter because there's a 1 on the bottom. So what number can be divisible by 3 and 2? Now you may think, oh, well 60 would work. Well 60 does work. But you want to think of the smallest possible multiple of both 3 and 2. What is the first number you can think of that 3 and 2 go into? It would be 6. Multiply everything by 6. So if you multiply everything by 6, that would give us 6 times 2 is 12. 12 divided by 3 gives us 4x. Let me redo that x there. 6 times x divided by 2. That's 6 divided by 2. That gives us 3x. Equals 6 times 7 equals 42. Now, if you still have fractions left over, then you didn't pick the correct number to multiply everything by. So, now what do? We combine like terms. 4x plus 3x is 7x equals 42. The last step is we have to get rid of our times 7, which is step 5. The opposite of times 7 is divide by 7. 42 divided by 7 gives us 6. So the answer to this equation is 6. Example number 5, and this will be our final example. Jane's cell phone plan is $40 per month plus 15 cents per minute over 200 minutes. If Jane's cell phone bill is $58, how many minutes did she talk? I want you to pause the video and try to set up an equation yourself. So pause the video, try to set up something yourself. All right, so the first thing I'm going to tell you is if word problems confuse you, the very first thing you always do is figure out what you need to find. Right there it says how many minutes. So we're going to let x, or whatever variable you want to use, represent what you're trying to find. And in this case, it's the number of minutes. So every time you see the word minutes, you're going to put an x in there. So let's see what Jane has to do. So Jane's cell phone plan is $40 per month. Every month it's $40. So we know she pays $40 per month. Plus she pays 15 cents per minute. Well, 15 cents, there's per minute. So that would be 15 cents per minute. Now per minute, well that's what x is. Because x is the number of minutes. Over 200 minutes. Now we don't have to deal with that. That's not money. If Jane's cell phone bill is $58, So we know she spent a what? A total of 58 bucks. So let's solve this. I have no parentheses, no fractions, no grouping symbols. So step 3 says combine like terms. Well, these are not like terms, so we're going to go to step 4. Step 4 says undo addition or subtraction. Well, we have plus 40. The opposite of plus 40 is subtract 40 on both sides. If we subtract 40 on both sides, 58 minus 40 gives me 15 cents equals 18. So now the opposite of times 15 cents is divide by 15 cents. And we get a value of x equals 120. Now in this problem, we know x is 120. So my answer to this would be 120 minutes. I'm going to tell you, though, that that's not the answer. Why? Why is 120 minutes not the answer? You have to read the problem carefully. This is how many minutes she was billed over 200 minutes. So she's actually only been billed 120 minutes. How many minutes has she already talked? She's already talked 200 minutes. So we have to add the 200 minutes back on. So she actually talked 320 minutes. That, ladies and gentlemen, is attending to precision. Making sure you answer the question and used everything you need to in the problem. So let's review our 5 steps. Our 5 steps were number 1, you can get rid of fractions first. Clear the fractions. Step 2, undo or get rid of all of the grouping symbols. That includes parentheses, brackets. Step 3, combine like terms on each side. Step 4, undo the addition and subtraction. And step 5, undo the multiplication and division.